guys, welcome back. It's me, Kenny Ray. I'm so excited to be here for another episode of the Craft and Carb podcast. Yes, we have officially launched. If you have no idea what that means, you need to go ahead and head over to our IG at Carbs Wellness, where you can see all of the fun content that we have going on, as well as stay up to date with some of the really interesting things that are going to be taking place in the upcoming episodes, like special guests and all sorts of fun things that you guys can also be engaged in as well. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I would really love if you guys could slide in my DMs. Don't be scared, don't be scared. I definitely don't bite. I would love to hear your feedback. I would love to hear your suggestions. And if you want to get a shout out, if you want to be featured on any of the episodes, or if you just want to say some, words or ask questions or whatever, slide in the DMs at Carbs Wellness and just let me know what's on your mind. So guys, let's definitely not take too long to really dive into this one because, as you know, we're in our relationship series. So every single episode is going to be on relationships. And it's interesting because I have this love-hate relationship with all of the talk that's going on with relationships right now in the social media space and just the entire media space. Relationships are such a common topic for some people, depending on the type of content that they're discussing. Like, it really is like clickbait and clout chasing almost, because there's just so much going on with the men and women of today's society and the way that we're trying to interact with one another. I don't know if it's because if this has been brought on because of the pandemic. Like, the pandemic made it really difficult for us to connect with each other. I mean, we were already having challenges, but now the pandemic made it so easy for everybody to talk about these challenges and to just be going on and on and on about, how they feel about this person and how this person acts and how they were raised and how the friend did them dirty, and we're just talking about each other nonstop. And so part of me is like, okay, come on, can we talk about something else? But then the part of me, I really see the difficulty, the disconnect, the struggle, the hordes of advice, of relationship advice that's really just coming from opinions and experiences, and that unfortunately is landing people back in the same positions or worse. And, there's just this cycle of perpetual dysfunction. And I'm like, well, I could stay as far away from it as I possibly can, or I could attempt to add my 2 cents to the bucket. And hopefully, because I'm not just trying to pepper you with what I think is right, and I'm really trying to lean in on a few biblical truths, right? But also just bringing some more perspectives in from whether it be philosophical, whether it be psychology, just bringing some other perspectives in so that we can get more than just us blabbing back and forth about what doesn't work. So today's episode is going to be a cornerstone. I have decided that I wanted to frame the first couple of episodes in our relationship series around what I believe to be the cornerstones of relationships, and things that I feel like in order for you to really, thrive in any type of relationship, whether it be friends, whether it be family, whether it be your romantic partner, I believe that these cornerstones, if you stop listening after these first 4 or 5 episodes where we talk about the cornerstones, if you don't listen to any other episode in the relationship series, these are the ones that you need, because you will be able to build a foundation that's healthy in every single relationship, as long as you prioritize these relationship cornerstones. So I'm really excited for today's relationship cornerstone because it is a very personal topic as of right now, which hopefully I'll get into that a little bit later as to why it is coming up in my personal life. But it's an exciting topic for me because I honestly feel like, not necessarily that it's taboo, but I feel like we don't really like to talk about it because when people hear this word, they immediately think money. And when it comes to people's money, people just do not like to be told what to do with their money, unless it's like something obligatory like bills or something like that, or like investments and how they can make more money. But you definitely don't want to be told what to do in terms of giving your money away. So, as fluffy and fun and exciting as this topic could be, it definitely has like a weird, I don't know if maybe it's just me, but I definitely feel like in the community, in certain communities, that having real well thought out conversations on this topic are just not common. Okay, so let me get to it. Ta-da! The topic is generosity. So this relationship cornerstone is all about generosity. So before we dive like super, super deep, I wanted to start out by defining what is a relationship. Now, everybody's definition of relationship is going to look different because a relationship is obviously subjective because it's supposed to be something that you voluntarily enter into and hopefully will have mutual benefits, right? I guess that is like a very baseline definition. I'm going to give you guys a different one, but if we strip everything away at the basis, it's supposed to be something you voluntarily enter into and that has mutual benefits. And so that's going to look different for everybody, right? The goals, the objectives, and the things that they desire are going to look different. So keep that in mind. And now I want to give you a very basic definition from the Oxford Languages Dictionary, which says that a relationship is simply the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. Which actually, when I really think about it, that's even more bare bones than the one that I just expressed because it's literally just about interconnectivity. And when it talks about the way, the manner, the aspects of which people or objects or things are being connected, then it kind of requires us to look at the why, you know, the way in which two or more things are connected. Okay, so why, right? And so that's how I get into the space of mutual beneficial. At least most of us feel that way. Like we don't really want a relationship that doesn't benefit us. Really, like and that's what we're going to be kind of focusing on is that, this is not about a relationship where you're just not receiving any benefits. I just don't even believe that that is a relationship. I believe that has to be something else. But maybe you can think of an example of why there would be something titled a relationship where you receive no, beneficial something from it. So anyway, so let's go with that definition. Yes, it's the way that two or more things, objects, people, persons, whatever, are connected. But we're adding on the fact that there is some sort of mutual benefit that is valuable to the people on both sides. And because we're talking about people, not talking about objects, we're going to stick with people. So, sorry, the working definition got a little all over the place because this one that I pulled up, I actually forgot it was so broad. But anyway, there are various kinds of relationships. As I stated at the outset, romantic, friends, family, job relationships, business relationships, acquaintances, etc. There's different levels and all sorts of things. And there may even be some relationship categories that I did not list that you believe exist and that are applicable to your own life. So feel free to add those in. But yes, this Cornerstone sub series, if you will, is going to be tailored to all different types of relationships, not just romantic relationships. And a cornerstone in my mind is anything that you build and grow upon. It is the base that you will take with you into each relationship, no matter the type, right? So I guess that sounds very familiar, sounds foundational, right? And we just left the foundational series. So, it's a good transitioning space for us to move away from the foundational series that we just did in the first 11 episodes of the podcast and into the relationship series. Um, so definitely be considering this in the same way. But these cornerstones are not just focused on you as the person. The foundational series is focused on the things that you need to be building within yourself. And yes, like as we go into the topic of generosity, you do absolutely need to be working on building a foundational lifestyle habits, everything like that in generosity for yourself. But it's also very important that the relationships foundation is generosity. So it's going to be what are the two or more individuals, who are connected in the relationship. How are they bringing that to the relationship? How are all individuals involved bringing generosity to the foundation of the relationship? Okay, so I want you guys to keep that in mind as for this episode, but also as we go into the other episodes, because it's not just about you, it's about everybody involved. It's about you, it's about everyone involved, and how are we all bringing this into the pot in our own way, and how is everybody satisfied with that? So I thought it was kind of interesting. I wanted to look up some of the ways in which we as humans build our philosophies on generosity. Like what things cause us to be generous, or what causes us to believe that generosity exists in this way versus this way, right? So, um, I definitely think that our philosophies on generosity come from three main spaces. And again, there may be some spaces here that I don't mention that you're like, oh, well, I absolutely feel that, this is where I learned it from. So if that's the case, drop down in the comments and let me know where your philosophy on generosity came from and why and who gave it to you and how does it build into your current life and your current relationship style. So the three main sources or spaces where we tend to derive our philosophies on generosity, I believe, come from family upbringing. So, what we saw our parents do, how did we see our parents invoke generosity into everyday life, into their everyday lifestyles? Were your parents individuals that refused to help someone of less advantage? Did they see someone who was homeless and kind of turn their noses up and say that person just needs to go to the shelter, or they need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, things like that? Or were they constantly handing out sandwiches to homeless people, or did they occasionally toss a little bit of money to a homeless person? Did they regularly encourage charity work? Like, what did you learn from your parents and family members? Because based on what we see them doing in that space, we are more than likely going to follow after that in terms of building our own philosophy about with respect to what's required in generosity to others. So that's just something to think about, and how you were raised, what your mother or father did, grandparents, all of that. And that is more than likely going to play a huge role in why you operate the way that you do with respect to generosity today. So the next one, I believe, is absolutely our circle, our close circles, our friends, things like that. So where are you regularly associating yourself? Who are the types of people that you regularly are associating yourself with? Usually those people are friends. It also could be family. So the difference between the first one is that the first one had to do with your family upbringing, and this one is now about the present. So who are you presently, currently, actively spending your time with? And family could still be involved in this, but it is usually friends, maybe coworkers, maybe, associates through business and things like that. And so the people that we associate with on a regular daily basis, how they show generosity to us and to those around them? Are these people showy or flashy with their wealth and then stingy and greedy in terms of giving it away? You know, when you go to lunches and dinners, do people offer to pay? Has anybody ever offered to pay for the entire table, or do they constantly require you to split it all the way down to the last dime, which is totally fine. I'm not judging if that's the case. Everybody has their own financial circumstances, but I'm just trying to make a point that if this is what you're regularly around, if this is what you're regularly interacting with and seeing, that this could potentially play a role in your own philosophy on, generosity. So think about that. Think about the main people you associate with, the main people that are in your life, the main people that you spend your 7-day week with, and how do they show generosity to you specifically and anybody else around them. So have you ever had any of your friends offer to give you gas money for no reason? Have you ever had your friends buy you lunch and send you, Uber Eats for no reason? Has your significant other ever done that? If that's someone you're regularly around. Um, so that's the second one. The third, I believe, we derive our philosophy on generosity from spirituality and religion. And then, of course, if you do not have a spiritual or religious affiliation, then you tend to pull it from the first two, or maybe you have determined your own kind of alignment or life moral compass that you have created for yourself. And that also falls into this third category. So, what did you learn, or what are you told or expected to do based upon your spiritual, religious mandates, convictions, moral convictions from whatever things that you say that you want to align your life upon? So, particularly when you grow up religious, that does mandate a certain level of selflessness and giving. And when I was doing research on this topic, interestingly enough, the very first article that I found was from a Christian-based website that was obviously tailored towards explaining to people the importance of giving. And of course, that was from a financial space. But again, spirituality, religion, all of these aspects or theories, concepts, belief systems, these are things that may also be the mandate or the space where you derived an understanding of what your obligation may have even been, or if there was no obligation, just depending on what it says, that may be a space where you also understand how generous you need to be or don't need to be. So I wanted to talk with you guys about the Bible's requirements on generosity. There are several different verses, and I want to go through them. I don't want to like rush through them, which I mean, a lot of times, like I will absolutely put these verses either at the beginning or at the very end because, I just want to give them to you as supplemental information for, just context purposes, or just so you guys can have that spiritual insight on the particular topic. But this one's right smack in the middle of our discussion because I actually feel like the Bible's conversation on generosity is so spot on. And maybe it's because it's spot on with how I've always felt and believed. But I believe that it is so spot on, and I believe that it is so central that regardless if you're a Christian or not, that these verses are really going to help you understand the requirement of generosity in relationships. So the very first verse that I want to share with you guys is 2 Corinthians 9, 7 through 8. And it says, "You must each decide in your heart how much to give, and don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure. For God loves a person who gives cheerfully, and God will generously provide all you need, and then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. So, interestingly enough, this is one of my favorite Bible verses. I have it written down on a poster board and just tackily thumbtacked to my wall because I just love this verse. I love to look at it. I love the spirit that it embodies. There's actually, in my opinion, so much to unpack, but I'm not going to break down the entire verse. I just want to really stick with verse 7. I want to actually do it out of order because verse 8 is important, but I really want to focus on verse 7. So verse 8 is talking about God generously providing all you need, and then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. And to me, that is just a reminder to us that there is no circumstances or situations to which we should not feel that we have the ability to give, because anytime that we are generous, God will always make sure that we are okay. He will always make sure that we have what we need and an additional surplus to be able to share with other people. So absolutely, wholeheartedly believe that and hope that you do too. So with verse 7, I think that this is kind of what I want to focus on for the purpose of the relationship aspect, that you must each decide in your heart how much to give. Okay, so that's the first part of the verse. You must each decide in your heart how much to give. So I've heard a lot of different people tell me that, in order for a person to truly understand how to help or be available to help, they need to be told exactly what you need. And I think that is a fair and accurate request. But I also believe that when you're operating in love, as the Bible does request and mandate us to do, you may not always get an exact specific task or understanding of what a person needs from you. And it just doesn't remove the requirement of deciding within your own heart how you want to show up in that person's life. In your own heart, in your own capacity, you have to decide who you want to be. You have to decide how much you want to give. You'd have to decide how you want to give. And that is something that you determine based on, of course, the individuals that you have in your life. If these are friends who you believe in your heart, you would just give anything for these people. If this is a relationship with an individual, you would just give anything to make sure that this individual is okay. And, if that's something you really believe in your heart, you have to make that decision within yourself before someone comes up to you and asks and for a handout or asks or says, hey, I need this, right? And so that is something that I think is captured in that first verse, is that it is our decision already in our heart, the way that we want to give, So if my brother or sister appears to be going through a hard time financially, but they don't ask me for anything, I'm just going to go ahead and cash app them a little something if I have it, that type of thing, because I've already decided in my heart that before my brother or sister comes to me and lets me know that they're struggling, if I see that they're struggling, my heart is already made up that I love them enough to go ahead and see if this little whatever that I'm giving them could help meet their needs. And I absolutely believe that that is something we need to do. So the second part says, and don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure. And I also believe wholeheartedly that you don't want to give reluctantly. You don't want to do it because you feel obligated. You don't want to do it with an expectation that you're going to receive something in return. So if that is your heart's disposition when you're about to give or when you're going to help someone in need, then you just need to pass. Go ahead and pass. And secondly, okay, if that's something you're sensing in somebody else, and when they are, giving or helping or whatever, and they have a disposition of being reluctant or feeling pressured or obligated to look out for you, then I'm not saying don't receive it. Depending on what kind of situation you're in, you may have to just go ahead and take it. But the reality is, you might just want to think about what really where the friendship is. And this is also a space to ask questions, ask questions and understand why this person is operating the way they do. For God loves a person who gives cheerfully. Now, everybody's not going to be hopping and skipping, especially if it's to the bank to help you out and to give. So understand that giving cheerfully isn't necessarily going to look like, oh my God, yes, absolutely. But it should look like, you'll know the difference. You know the difference when someone is excited to help you and excited to look out for you, versus when they're not. So I would just caution everybody to use their own discretion with that kind of thing, but absolutely take your time and understand what that means for you. So the next verse is 1 John 3:17-18. And it says, if anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. So I'm definitely going to go about this one in order, because this one is twofold for me in terms of what I believe is really important. Clearly, it's talking about material possessions. So that's not just money. We're talking about whatever you have. Whatever you have in your hand. That could be literally, do you have extra room in your house for somebody that's getting evicted from their place? Do you have a car and somebody needs a ride to work? What do you have in your hand? What do you have? And if you haven't, you have no pity on them and you just say, well, I hope they figure it out, then how can the love of God be in you? The second verse that says, dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. And this one is really important to me because I think in today's day and age, now this one I feel like spills more over into romantic relationships than friendships. I don't really think, I've never really been in situations where this exists as in friendships as much as I've seen in romantic relationships. But you drop down in the comments and let me know if you have had friends that are have operated like this. Let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. Now, don't get me wrong. There are definitely times when you need to give an encouraging and loving word to your friend. But you giving a loving and encouraging word to your friend who's getting evicted, like, no. Let's go and get some action going, okay? And in truth and in the reality. Let's sit in reality and in truth and understand that brother or sister or friend or boyfriend or girlfriend are going through XYZ experience, and we need to step up and get involved. Doesn't mean that we are able to or even going to fix the situation, but we need to step up and get involved. And that is something that I see a lot of times in romantic relationships, where occasionally partners feel like, oh, well, she's not my wife yet, so I guess, I hope she gets through it. And, I got your back. And they'll tell you, they love you and they think the world of you and everything, and they would do anything for you. But when you are really, really going through it, like, that is when you truly see the value of those words and what those words really mean to them. And unfortunately, sometimes people's words just do not hold weight when when things actually hit the fan. And so that's really unfortunate, which is absolutely why this is so important for us to make sure that we are challenging ourselves to, make sure that we are doing the right things within ourselves, but also when we are assessing the people who are going to be in our lives and the people that we are going to choose to be in relationship with. Okay, and so my last verse, loves, is Galatians 6:2. It says, bear ye one another's burdens, have sympathy, feel for each other, and consider the case of a distressed brother as your own, and so fulfill the law of Christ. So I really love this verse because, and I didn't do this on purpose, but I really just love the order of which all three of these verses fall after one another. But I really think that this verse transcends in literally any situation, because if you really are unable to have sympathy compassion and really consider the case of a distressed brother as your own, then we have a really big problem. You have a big problem if you can't do it, and you have a big problem if the person that you're trying to be in relationship with can't do it either. And this is at varying intensities, right? Because I stand very strongly when I say this does apply to every single relationship, even with work. If you are working in an environment where they can't even consider your circumstances, where you're going through something really, really rough and they just toss you to the side, okay? At the second that you're having a rough time or a rough patch, that is not, I'm not telling you to quit your job. I'm just telling you to think about that reality for yourself and whether or not that's a place that you really want to grow in. Obviously, you have to make money, you need income, and you do what you need to do. But everyone is deserving of an evaluation of the relationships they are in. And if this is something that's not healthy for you, then potentially you needing to scale back on your efforts and your input and your, involvement may help you to alleviate any, anxiety, stress, or depression that you may feel from working in an environment that really just doesn't value you. And can't even look out for you when you're going through a really tough time. So anyway, I'm just saying all this to say that it really does tie into every single relationship. It is something that you need to be thinking about at the very least, and surveying for yourself within yourself as far as what you need in each relationship dynamic. But yes, the Bible absolutely requires us to feel for each other. We need to feel, empathize with what somebody else is going through, and consider that particular thing our own. What if it was happening to you? Time and time again, we see things on TV, like with, the wars and different things going on overseas, or the shootings that are going on in the schools. And we say, oh, that's just too bad. But we're starting to get more and more desensitized to it. And it's just really unfortunate. And I noticed that within myself. Like, I'm not saying just y'all. Like, I definitely was starting to get desensitized to it. But one of the things that I had to start doing was thinking about if that was one of my younger siblings, that was at that school, or if, I was a mother and I had sent my child to school. When you start to think about it that way, it also helps to frame and how you're going to show up in the world, instead of just turning a blind eye to everything that isn't directly tied to you and your circumstances. There's just a certain level of compassion and emotional involvement that we do have to have in situations that are not our own. So before, I don't want to go too deep into the meat of the topic because we have so many other things that I want to cover, but that is the Bible's view. And I think it's an amazing one. I think it's an incredible one. And I think it serves as a really strong foundation for anybody's understanding of how they're going to begin to look for generosity in others and build generosity into the foundation of their various relationships. So, funnily enough, now I really want to get into what generosity is. So, I know that it's subjective, right? It is. Everybody is going to have their own view and version of what generosity is. Now, let's just say that for the sake of this episode, though, that generosity is going to be based on a surplus of what you have, right? So that's not the definition, but any type of generosity that you are able to dish out is always going to be based on a surplus of what you have. It's not when you are in a deficit, when you do not have, when you have less than what you need for yourself. Generosity is literally based on a surplus of what you have. Now, sometimes when you are in a relationship, you are going to be required to do things for somebody else, especially when you're in a romantic relationship or a friendship or a family member. You're going to be in a space where you need to do something for another person when you are not at a surplus. And that, from my view, is called a sacrifice. And sacrifices are absolutely required, and of course, a form of generosity, but they are required in relationships as well. So, don't get too ahead of yourself in terms of thinking about sacrifice, however, because I just want to focus us in on generosity, especially because sacrificial love is not going to be something that's automatic. You should, in my opinion, you should not be expecting friendships of less than a few years and romantic relationships that are somewhat new to be extremely sacrificial at the outset. And it also depends on, it's not really about the amount of years. It really just depends on the level to which you all are intertwined and you have committed to one another and what you understand the relationship to be. If you understand the relationship to be at a space where sacrifices are something that should be happening and they're not, then that's also an issue. But we're just talking about basic generosity, because if these people are not even able to exhibit that, then there's absolutely no way that they're going to be able to sacrifice down the road when it's really necessary. So this is you needing to make sure that this exists so that you can understand where that person could even potentially end up when the sacrificial love is going to be required. So, okay. Our working definition of generosity is based on, I think, what is also in the Oxford Language Dictionary. And it says, generosity is a showing of readiness to give more of something, such as money or time, than is strictly necessary or expected. See, I love this definition. I think this definition is incredible. I'm going to read it again, and I hope that it hits you. Generosity is a showing of readiness to give more of something, such as time or money, than is strictly necessary or expected. Y'all, if this is not the one or the two, then I don't know. But yeah, I love this definition because as we start to get into it more, I've heard and learned that so many people are just so content with doing the bare minimum and giving the bare minimum. The bare minimum is, depending on the person, their bare minimum may actually still be a really good bare minimum. Bare minimum is not always bad. I know that term is kind of coined now in today's society to kind of reflect something that's not good, but bare minimum is not always bad. But bare minimum is also reflective of, okay, where you're at in the relationship. So sometimes certain people only need to meet the bare minimum. Certain family members, certain work environments, that's okay. But you really need to assess for yourself. Is that something that you are okay with? Just receiving the bare minimum in these different, respects. And more times than not, we're not satisfied with the bare minimum. We need more than just a paycheck and a couple of benefits. We need more than just, somebody that's going to go out to the club and party with us in a friendship. And we need more than just a man who is going to, take us on a few dates and, make us feel good about ourselves. So that is definitely a great working definition. And honestly, we should all write it down and tape it to our foreheads for the next week, because if we are showing up in the world like this and others are not, then we need to make sure we're demanding this specific type of generosity. So Generosity is something that absolutely starts in the heart, as we talked about with one of the Bible verses. But in order for that to form, you really have to break free from the scarcity mindset, which is something that I've learned is really difficult for certain individuals, especially if they grew up impoverished or from lack, or even if they experienced poverty or lack in their adult lives for a certain period of time before they came out of that space, or if they're still in a space where they believe that they are impoverished or dealing with lack. But the scarcity mindset is definitely problematic, especially when you're a Christian, because, as Christians, we know that God has promised us abundant lives. He has promised us fruitful lives. He has promised us lives, again, where we will have exceedingly abundantly above all we could ever ask or think. As well as him letting us know that he will always give us everything that we will need, and we will always have plenty left over to share with others. So we don't need, as Christians, we definitely don't need to be operating in a scarcity mindset. Now, for the rest of y'all, that's a different story. I don't know how that works. I can't answer that for you. But just know that if you're struggling with generosity and you're not a Christian, you may be operating in the scarcity mindset, and you may need to be thinking about some ways that you can break free from that. So let's talk through that scarcity mindset really quickly. One of the things, from the Bible that really kind of addresses that scarcity mindset is the widow from Luke 21, 3-4. She's the one that gave her last. She didn't have any money left in her pocket except for 2 coins. That's all she had. She was literally like so broke that she only had two pennies. And I'm guessing back in the biblical times, women didn't work. So, and she was a widow. I think that's why they told us she was a widow, because she didn't have a husband to provide for her. And she also wasn't working. So she had nothing to provide for herself to regain any income. But she knew that it was the right thing to do, which is to give of her last. And it's just really highlighting her heart posture to give this money. And, her spirit led her to do that. And of course, we know that she was blessed because of that. So generosity is just not something that is transactional. It's a spiritual activity. It's something that we are doing from a place that is not about logic. It's not about what we think all the time. It's about our display of love, affection, care, and concern that comes from a deep spiritual place, and that's not always rooted in what we think we have to do. A lot of times, generosity can be the physical manifestation of our feelings towards those that we love and care about. And so, in that same vein, the lack of an ability of generosity is also the manifestation of our feelings towards those we love and care about. So again, if you're struggling, or somebody in your life is struggling to share or be generous to you, it's something you need to be thinking about. It's something that you can maybe hopefully have a conversation about. And I would just caution you to approach it with a lot of care and openness and compassion, especially if this is a romantic relationship where you are a woman involved with a man, because it can really make some waves to have a conversation about somebody's generosity, since it can potentially invoke a perception of you being ungrateful. But at the same time, you want to feel a certain level of love, affection, care, and concern, and you have a right to voice those things. And you also have a right to voice those in friendships as well. So a scarcity mindset is built from the belief that there isn't enough to go around, and that we have to hold on tight to what we have just in case. But everything we have comes from God. God is generous and abundant, so it will never run dry. What is meant for you will always be for you. And I wanted to just make sure that I read specifically what was in my notes, because it was a really good point when I was writing it. I remember how powerful it was to really highlight exactly what the scarcity mindset is, and the reality that, a lot of us especially if we grew up in that space of poverty or just not having a lot, we believe that we had to hold on so tight just in case. Whether that's money or things, a lot of times people that have scarcity mindsets end up becoming hoarders. They have a hard time letting certain things go, because they grew up in poverty and they just feel like, oh, just in case. So anyway, just some things for you to be thinking about, especially if you exhibit or somebody exhibits any of these scarcity mindset practices. And again, it's not to penalize them, fault them, kick them to the curb, but just, if there is something that you're needing in the relationship and you're wanting to bring generosity to the foundation of the relationship and this person is struggling to do it, then this could be why, and it's absolutely worth a conversation. So as you know, I always love to throw in a couple of scientific things relating to generosity. So I'm just going to rattle some of the fun facts that I found, from a Psychology Today article, which I love Psychology Today. So, neuroscience has demonstrated that giving is a powerful pathway for creating more personal joy and improving overall health. Wild. Like, some of us are just like, so, like, we struggle, whether it be health wise, mentally, all these different things. And some of the reasons why are because of stuff like this, because we don't even exhibit like just natural human characteristics that would be beneficial to us, because we're trying so hard to protect ourselves that we're actually not necessarily hurting ourselves, but we're actually preventing ourselves from being able to heal and thrive. So just think about that. Neuroscience has demonstrated that giving is a powerful pathway for creating more personal joy and improving your overall health. That's pretty crazy. So every single time that you give and you do something good for someone else, you are doing something to impact your physiological well-being in a positive way. The article goes on to say that happiness chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin are released during small acts of generosity and kindness. The author of this article and researcher Amy Campbell teaches that generosity can actually improve your physical health and well-being. Yeah, so what's interesting is if you guys know anything about I guess brain chemistry and the release of different happiness chemicals, right? You'll be familiar with dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, and all three of these are usually in some way, shape, or form involved with drug usage, sex, and alcohol use, and I think cigarettes too. So a whole host of things that we need all the time. And that's why we, sometimes turn to these activities and harmful products. And of course, I know alcohol is not always harmful, but it can be if you overindulge. So we're constantly turning to these things to create these, artificial chemical releases when we could literally just be doing stuff like loving our neighbor and helping someone in need. And that would also give us those same sort of chemical boosts. So just another interesting thing to think about. Healthier bodies, the article says, greater empathy, lower rates of depression, longer lifespans. Doing just one thing will allow you to accrue all these physical, emotional benefits. What is the magic pill? It's generosity. So look, I'm just reading to you guys the article, what has been studied. I had no idea that there were so many benefits to this. I mean, if you're somebody who's like a little selfish and like really wants to have a long life and a good body and, then this is definitely something that is mutually beneficial for you, to be generous and giving and loving to the people in your life, for crying out loud, let alone people that you don't know. And lastly, it says Researchers have found that generosity is the key also to better communication, more empathy, less arrogance, and all of these things are critical to running a business very, very well. So this isn't even just something that they studied for your own physiological benefits. They say that generosity helps you to be someone who can exhibit skills of leadership and business enterprise at a high level. So, like, what? That's amazing. I'm definitely going to just keep that in my back pocket for myself as I continue to grow and progress, and I hope you will too. But one of the things that I took away from this Psychology Today article is how beautiful it is that our loving and generous God wired us this way. Like, he literally created us to be generous and orchestrated our bodies to release these positive chemicals. Like, could you imagine if, like, when we were generous, like, it released a negative chemical? Because it could. It literally could. Our body can do whatever it's designed to do, but it's designed to release positive chemicals from something like this. And that's just an amazing testament to our God and who he is, and the fact that he wired us to receive like these positive benefits from doing the things that he desires for us to do in terms of generosity and loving our neighbors. So, um, yeah, I guess just last but not least, I've been talking about it like all throughout this podcast episode, but I really, 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 really want to just summarize and nail down, like, succinctly, why generosity is a relationship cornerstone, okay? Because I want it to be very clear to you why I truly believe that in order for a positive, happy, successful relationship, all of the people that are involved need to be exhibiting this, readiness to give above what is expected or necessary. So I think I shared earlier on social media, and I don't remember if it was at the beginning of this podcast, but I believe that, and from the way I see it, the connection to generosity in the relationship context is the exhibit of selflessness. So you want to know that a person that you are in relationship with has the ability, the capacity to step outside of themselves and not only see and meet the needs of others, but anticipate them as well. So look, I don't have time to get into it, but absolutely 10,000%, this is going to be required of you on the job. Now, your job, it may be a little unreasonable, right? For your job to anticipate your needs, right? But absolutely, like, if you have a need, if you are dealing with something, if you need support, you would want for your job to step outside of their goal, not all the time, but whatever it is that they're, so hyper focused on, and be able to assist you from time to time. It's not always, it's not constant. There has to be some give and take, but you want to be in an environment that will allow for that give and take. Work wise, friendship wise, it's the same thing. And I definitely believe that the anticipation of somebody's needs is the ultimate mark of love, because it shows attention to that person. It shows that you are listening to them. It shows that you are focused on learning them. It shows that you are appreciative of who they are inside and out. And so when you see those shifts in temper, when you see those shifts in demeanor, when you see just things that are not congruent with who you understand them to be, maybe you're learning to pick up on, okay, this is my best friend, and normally she calls me every single day at 6 p.m. So let me call her and check up on her. If I don't hear anything, I'm just going to go ahead and send her a milkshake. Like, little things like that, are really, going above what is expected, going above what is necessary. And that is generosity. That is generosity. But more importantly, it's a marker of selflessness. And so that is why, generosity is absolutely a relationship cornerstone. And generosity really does effortlessly breed that selflessness, and selflessness is a must in relationship. The ability to be selfless all the time, no, but to do it when it's appropriate, when it's necessary, and when possible, absolutely. Um, Selflessness is a variety of things, right? But it looks like understanding that the world does not revolve around you. Selflessness looks like someone's ability to be ready to compromise, the ability to put, as we said, put yourself or put themselves in someone else's shoes. Selflessness provides the opportunity to practice forgiveness and be in a space where you are ready and capable and able to forgive. Selflessness helps breed authenticity, okay, because everything should be done without the expectation of a reward. So you have to be authentic in your giving and you're putting yourself to the side. Selflessness also helps for genuine appreciation of the other person. When you're able to put yourself over here, you can really look and see who he or she or they are and really appreciate them for who they are. Selflessness helps you to become a great listener. Selflessness breeds patience. Selflessness also usually comes with effortless compliments instead of criticism. Selflessness also helps produce effortless solutions versus criticism. So, because you're not focusing on the self, you're able to not focus on that person's flaws so much, but you're able to compliment them on the things they're great at, and you're able to find solutions for the flaws that need some solutions. Instead of just being so hell-bent on whatever it is that you've identified as bad or wrong that you just are whatever. So, selflessness also usually evokes the regular unprompted acts of kindness and also full and complete acceptance of the other person and or their situation. So look, generosity literally breeds all of these things. And I think that when you are looking at people, right, from when you're first meeting them in those first couple of weeks and getting to know them, or when you're trying to build or rekindle a relationship with a family member, or when you're trying to decide whether or not to go deeper in your work environment or even in your family relationships, these are the things that you need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about it in the context of what can I give? And you need to be thinking about it, is this person able to meet me there as well in the giving space, in the generosity space. So to summarize this entire episode, you guys, I just want to say that I want you to remember that generosity is about giving from a surplus, not when you are in a deficit. And if you're constantly operating out of a deficit, it is okay to make sacrifices for those that you love and care about, but these have to be reserved for special occasions or special people in your life until you're able to regain your surplus. You should not be bending over, breaking your back to make sure that everyone else is good, especially when you are struggling and you're actually the one that is suffering. That is actually not okay. So I definitely wanted to make that disclaimer. You know, we really dove deep in our Wellness Well episode, which was either episode 3 or 4. I cannot remember now. But that particular episode can help you get back to a surplus. And this is on every front. This is when you are really taking charge of working on that wellness well, you will get to a place where that surplus is regained in every aspect of your life. So if you need to, go back and listen to that, because you really should not be attempting to even enter into too many relationships if you are operating at a deficit. In fact, just probably chill and focus on yourself for a while, if you have friends and loved ones who are supporting you and who are healthy and good and there for you, include them in the process. Don't isolate yourself, but you should not be attempting to enter into and build new relationships until you are operating on a surplus, even if it's a small surplus, even if you're just like +1 over the bar, like just get yourself together, work on yourself, get that wellness well together. I just want to also make a disclaimer that all of these episodes in the relationship series that we're going to be discussing are being, every discussion, every, conversation that I'm having with you guys is going to be made under the assumption that you have done the work. Okay. So specifically the work that we talked about from the foundational series. So I don't want you guys to feel like, oh my God, like I'm here in my life and oh my gosh, there's no way that I can be generous. There's no way I can expect generosity. Well, it's probably because there are some things going on in your own personal life that you need to address, and that's okay. Like I said, the foundational series is all about getting you to a place where you can be good to stand on your own and be ready to enter into relationship with others. And so if you need to go back and check those out, please go and listen to every single last episode that you need to listen to from the foundational series. Okay, you guys. Wow, this was fun. As always, I love it here, and I'm so happy to be with you guys every single Monday at 7 o'clock. The Crafted and Carved podcast is just such an incredible space, and I'm so happy to be able to share it with you guys. Please make sure that you like, share, subscribe on your preferred platform so that we can get all the love coming our way. You guys, we're going to have some live episodes coming up very, very soon. So stay tuned for those. Stay tuned for all of the updates and information by following us at Carved Wellness on IG. That's CarvedWellness. And you can also send me a DM to, send me some feedback, suggestions, questions, whatever you want to do. Or even if you would like to be featured as a guest speaker on our upcoming episodes, because we will have some of those coming up as well. Woo! It's a good day today, you guys. God is good. So definitely, stay tuned, stay locked in, guys. I love you so much, and I can't wait to talk to you next week. Bye.